for repress. Bad things are blown out of proportion and spread around. But the good things of the island they will never mention.
To Inside Media, hello, my name is Patrick Salia. It's another edition and a beautiful weekend. This program highlights and discusses major issues that have been topmost for the newscasts across newspapers, radios, and television. Sometimes, in fact, on social media, new media, which now determines for most people the order of the day. It's the Inside Media on SLBC, and my panel of analysts this weekend include Professor Cecil Blake, Peter Cisse, and Kelvin Lando. Gentlemen, good morning. Good morning. And if you want to join us on the issues we are discussing, then text us. The number is visibly on your screen that will be displayed, so you can join the conversation. And our discussion this weekend will focus on, of course, the 2022 appropriation bill that has been presented to members of parliament by the Minister of Finance, Dennis Vandi. Logos Hope, the sailing book fair, arrives in Sierra Leone for the 7th tour to this West African state amidst the decline in the reading culture among Sierra Leoneans. And a study of a civil society group known as Society for Knowledge Management says the use and availability of libraries in school is nothing to write home about. We'll also be discussing the issue of lawlessness, recklessness that seem to be overtaking or becoming the order of the day now in Sierra Leone. Leone Stars, of course, all road to Cameroon in 2022 in January. How much are we into preparations for the team's much anticipated victory or participation in that tournament? Well, we'll be looking at these issues, so join us. Don't forget, the number again is on your screen to text us if you can. Let us begin with the 2022 appropriation bill that has been presented to members of parliament by the Minister of Finance, Dennis Vandi, on Friday, the 19th of November 2022. Before we start the conversation on that, let's join Joseph Toure as a report from Parliament.
It was a well-attended ceremony that brought together ministers of government, heads of parastatals, members of the diplomatic community, CSOs, and many others. The 2022 budget focuses on building resilience for inclusive green recovery, seeks also to resuscitate the economy. According to the Minister of Finance, the over 11 trillion leones budget gives more priority to education, agriculture, infrastructure and trade.
Education. The government is allocating 1.7 trillion to the education sector, accounting for 22% of the total discretionary budget to support basic, secondary, higher and TVET education. The government is allocating 896.7 billion, accounting for 11% of total discretionary expenditure. This reflects our commitment to progressively increase expenditure to the health sector.
However, he expressed concern over the revenue and expenditure projections, citing the exposure of the economy that to significant external risk.
The first surge of COVID-19 cases will put tremendous pressure on the budget. The associated restrictive measures will depress economic activities and undermine domestic revenue collection. The need to respond to the spread of the disease in terms of surveillance, testing, quarantine, and treatment will increase government expenditure above budgeted levels and crowd out other priority spending. The most effective mitigating measure is to scale up vaccine uptake. Second, the continuing rise in international fuel and food prices present another risk to the implementation of the budget.
Lawmakers had their various opinions following the first reading of the 2022 budget.
One, we worry still whether expenditures will be controlled since we've been here now 4 years. Every year we hear the same thing, fiscal consolidation. We see the increases in revenue collection, but we've not seen significant measures to manage government expenditure.
It's been directed towards that. So about 20 to 21% is been directed to basic and senior secondary education. Provide for free quality, to pay for tuition, to build schools, to provide for school and teacher learning materials, to ensure that the free quality education process is sustainable. That has been the process and will continue to do.
We want to see how resilient this budget will be, and as members of parliament we are going to study it carefully to ensure that we map out where the resilience of the 2022 budget points at.
The minister in his presentation was making so much allusion to that of the COVID. You tend to wonder to what extent does the COVID-19 has impacted our economy.
Thank you, Joseph, for that report there. Well, that is a significant percent increase from the 2021 budget. The 2021 was about 9.1 trillion. Now we are over 11 trillion leones in 2022. That is as a result of the burden that has been placed on the government's allocations. But let's discuss these issues. Top priorities, of course, education, agriculture, health. Let's start with you, Kelvin Lando, on this. Aren't we changing the narrative to see how best we could focus on one sector per year, develop it thoroughly before we move to another sector, instead of biting more than perhaps we can chew?
Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity. I cannot say biting more than we can chew. As far as I'm concerned, Sierra Leone has grown so much in terms of its economy and its operations in general. And we are in urgent need for development. And development is all-encompassing. You cannot just say we concentrate on roads this year and we leave all the schools closed because you want to prioritize. No way. It is broadening and everything should happen at the same time, because otherwise development is intertwined. So 11 trillion actually, it seems a lot, but it's not enough for Sierra Leone because of the urgency and the need for financial and our development aspirations. So my own take is about the imbalance. There is an imbalance between revenue collected and the expenditure, because a lot of people do say we have a bloated wage bill, and of course government has a lot of procurements to do in terms of running the country. You know, the ministry, departments and agencies are even owing up to its debt servicing and all the rest of it. You can see that. But another thing, actually, it's big on paper, but it's small on the ground. And this is just a projection. And we depend on domestic revenue generation to meet this 11 trillion. I wonder if we could, because of the global economic challenges, which is not peculiar to Sierra Leone, but Sierra Leone is in the mix very seriously, because when it comes to our economic or our financial backbone, we do look up to our minerals.
GDP is very low.
Yeah, we look up to our minerals, which are not
well utilized.
Not well utilized, which are not on the high for the moment, because we are still grappling with getting our iron ore set out, and our other minerals like diamond, gold, but I don't know what we are doing with Sierra Rutile actually. I really don't know. I want to study the Sierra Rutile situation because bauxite price is going up and it is a flourishing market. Even our neighboring sister Republic of Guinea is getting a boom on that side. So I don't know what the situation is, but we need to study it properly before making comments. And also, the minister was talking about the risk factors affecting the economy. You know, it is more or less a global thing, but you have to take your own challenge. Amidst the great ocean, you have to make sure you take your boat to a safer ground. So it's a challenge that they should work on. This
concern.
But let me just finish about the diversification. There was a huge saying by the president of this country that if we want to develop as a nation, we have to diversify our economy. So I want to see this diversification because we are still an export-driven economy, which is not good. Import-driven, I'm sorry, import-driven. And I want to see the vast because the more we export, the better for our foreign exchange, and then the better for our economy to go. But the way it is now, I think it's only 10% that is about what we consume here is really manufactured here. The rest is all import, including our staple food. And you see this diversification, if they embark on it, I think maybe we can do this 11 trillion. But what I always want to end up with by saying that we know that whenever they read the budget, they will have a projection of 11 trillion that should be used, but they won't come back to tell us whether we attained this amount when it's the next financial year. So but as you can see and you can tell and you can understand by the way government works and by the way we understand things, that there is always a budget deficit. And that was what the Honorable Kandiyum Kela was trying to point out. There was always a budget deficit. So are we taking the budget deficit to the next year, or is it being captured in the next coming year, or they just nullify it as it is and they will move forward? And if that's the case, then there is a problem with our MDs in terms of getting their allocations.
There has been this concern about us wanting to lean on the COVID pandemic as an excuse for not executing our national desires, more or less, or aspirations. Is that not outdated now?
No, I'm not seeing it as an excuse. I see it as an opportunity. In any difficult situation, it's an opportunity for the good thinkers to come up with solutions. So that's what I'm driving them to do at this point in time. This is for now it has been a flimsy excuse, because initially when it started we were in a panic situation, but now we all know what to do. The entire world knows what to do now in terms of fighting COVID-19 and being resilient to its consequences in terms of our economic growth and the way we want to move ahead as a nation. A lot of the countries that are supposed to help us out, they too are grappling with the problem of COVID. So if we are using COVID as an excuse, then our donors also would use COVID as an excuse not to help us. So what do? We have to think, we have to initiate, we have to use our brains now to move forward.
Professor, of course you've been into the cycle for some time. An experienced man now. And what over time has been a challenge for most MDAs, the government ministries, departments and agencies, is that they are either not given the allocations meant for them, or some quarters are not allocated to them. Some, if they come, they are late. I think that was the point Kelvin was alluding to when Dr. Kandiyum Kela raised in Parliament, that those aspects, are they to be nullified, are they to be carried forwarded to next year budget or whatever the case may be. But of course you cannot be allocated with monies and use it and do not return that money. But often they do not receive the allocations, or the allocations are very late?
Yeah, first and foremost, I'm not an economist, so I am not going to be speaking from the perspective or knowledge base of economists. I have observed certain things in government while serving, and you're very correct in terms of budget allocations. We're given allocations which do not arrive, okay? And it makes it extremely difficult for ministries to perform well. But there's an issue raised by Kelvin, which I think is extremely important. The issue of deficit planning, deficit budget planning. This is not unique. You know, the United States survives on deficit planning. The problem is this: for us, can we sustain it? And this is where I get worried, because the extent to which we generate revenue and the gap between that generation of revenue, okay, and the deficit planned within the budget worries me tremendously. So I don't think it's sustainable. I think, for me, I think at the continental level, because it's a continental problem, we have too much dependency on donors. You know, yes, I have never been a fan of the concept of a donor-driven economy. Let me give you a specific example, because it's better to use specific examples than, you know, with theorizing. There was a time that the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting, when we looked at the allocation, it was really, really ridiculous in terms of running that ministry. And I wrote a paper in which a cabinet paper proposing an overall in the ministry, complete overhauling. I did an audit, okay, both personnel and infrastructural audit, and came up with a budget. And I was told that, well, you have to go, practical was you have to go beg for it. And
You have to go what?
beg.
We don't want to use the diplomatic language, lobby.
I don't use diplomatic language when it comes to analysis. No, because it's foolishness on the part of African governments to try and use beggary as a basis of governance. And I don't know how to get over this, but the mere fact that we have to depend so much on others to do our stuff, it's crazy. I fought a battle.
And when you know you can do it,
You can do it
with what you have.
You can. And so when we talk about budget, for me, I don't know the percentage of dependency on donors for the budget, this budget. Can anybody clarify that?
I don't think it was mentioned, because I think it's not a way. It's not a way for
Maybe the government itself is scared now, but some of us were not thorough enough to listen keenly. The debates will actually rule out or clarify some of those points, because the debate will actually commence by next week, having parliament on that very appropriation bill presented by the minister.
Okay. Yeah. This was just done yesterday, right?
Yes.
Yes. So we have to digest it well, and then I think we'll be able to make more intelligent comments. Because right now it was the presentation. I listened to the parliamentarians' reaction. So let's see how the debate goes in Parliament.
Peter speaks, by the way, for government here in this program, and in that regard, Peter is always mindful of
This man and Peter, I don't know.
always mindful of what he also say. But anyway, in this regard, top priorities: education, health, agriculture, infrastructure. Of course, infrastructure takes a whooping sum from the national budget. I know there must have been some specific targets of infrastructural projects to be undertaken under this 2022 budgetary allocation of financial year. But infrastructure is capital intensive. Education is capital intensive. All of these top priorities are capital intensive. But like I asked you earlier, maybe it's time for us to start having a national agenda, not a political governance agenda, where you set these top priorities which many will say you're biting more than you can chew. Rather, you take two or one, solve them a year or two, and then you champion another cause, another sector, the subsequent years, and then you move ahead. But in this case, donor dependency is also a question mark, because what is being presented usually does not turn out to be what comes in from the national revenue generation. Largely, we would have to depend on donors. Is that what we're expected to see in 2022?
Well, I still not want to subscribe to your sentiment around the government biting more than they can chew. In my opinion, you will agree with me that there is always a meeting that precedes the budget formulation.
The budget hearings?
No, not the hearing actually, when MDs are invited to bring forward.
That's the budget hearing is
I thought you were referring to the parliamentary. Okay, so now, and that cause, you definitely will want to project yourself as a minister that intends to make developments, you understand? And you just can't make any development in illusion. It has to be a project that you can set yourself with, a project that is time-bound and that is achievable. So I will not be surprised to see like infrastructure this time coming up with a huge chunk, you understand? Because when you take into consideration the road connectivity vis-a-vis their relevance to how we can get our commodities from the source to the market, you understand? These are significant enough to help boost the economy. So if this government will want to prioritize infrastructure, I don't think they are biting much. You will agree with that the city itself, like Doc will always want to say, is now becoming over congested. So we have to have alternative plans in the networking of the roads itself, like the hillside bypass road. This has spanned for more than 10 years because it was initiated in the Tijan Kaba-led government, you understand? And we are still grappling with it, you understand? So,
and some roads are still under construction.
So,
and as a result of government's grants or subventions or applications, they have not been completed yet.
So, wanting to prioritize the, how they can expedite the conclusion of those roads, I think will make sense. But above all, we would not want to shift attention from the government priority around human capital development, which still has a focus the education, agriculture and health. And we have not really got the details of the budget, because until when we are engaged in the debate, you begin to see the real in-depth of what is embedded in it. But so far, there is one thing that we cannot escape from, because I could recall you saying if government is not wanting to use the COVID as an excuse. This is a global problem.
Yes.
It has really shattered a lot of strong economies, you understand? And there's one thing that we must always be mindful of. The movement of goods from one country to another are always, facilitated by the movement of ship on the high seas.
Kelvin's point.
Fine.
About more imports than exports.
So no, but this can't be out of our own making. You will agree with me that some countries are almost equally divided as to who want to voluntarily take the vaccine and those that don't want to take vaccines. Some are even initiating compelling measures for workers to take. So until you have a comfort zone around the strength that we'll use to fight this pandemic, nobody's just going to open up his or her boundaries, you understand?
But Peter, with these budgets being presented by the government, one should be by now hearing of what lessons is the government learning from these. Remember the Ebola Well, now it's the COVID, because these are situations that call for other countries to lock themselves down away from you, shut their doors away from you. But for us, we're not a producing country. We used to be an exporter nation, but not anymore. Several decades ago, and we still are dependent on importing what we can even consume in our stomach. Even though we have arable land, vast arable land, the workforce is there, the possibly what is required is seedling, but we cannot utilize what we have.
Patrick, it's a gradual process.
And it's also a priority in the 2022 budget. So what are we learning?
It's a gradual process. Like with the agriculture, you are seeing a big shift in their strategies as compared to before. Now we do talk about harvesters, which 3 or 4 times will speed up your productivity rate. You understand? It's a gradual process. You can recall that I think 2 or 3 months back, the president launched a chocolate producing company in Kenema. So there will come a time when we'll definitely be producing the very things that we most often import. You understand? It's just a matter of strength, belief. You understand? Because like you talk about the iron ore producing or mining companies, there is also a company that has been sort of, there was a discussion about how they can start producing most of the materials that will need here. And if that boosts, you understand, if that becomes functional, there is no way you will say the country will continue to lean on foreign support or foreign import. We are trying to give a convenient balance, but it has to be gradual. You have to law, you have to cajole investors.
You have to beg.
Well, not beg necessarily. You have to cajole a lot of investors to come. When you have factories like the chocolate factory we are talking about, in places like America, you are talking about an investment that will attract a lot of dollars. Currently,
are chocolates a staple food of Sierra Leone?
It's not necessarily going to be a staple food.
So why not?
We're talking about processing. Processing. When we start processing,
here is a situation.
Then we can move forward.
Here is a situation. There is a bilateral agreement between Sierra Leone and the Gambia already, wherein most of what we produce here now, like oil, will be exported to them. Like the granite stone that probably we are underutilizing, in my opinion. There is an agreement now for those things to be exported. And you will agree with me that even the foreign reserve in the bank made a little bit of growth as compared to the past. So it's going to be a gradual process. When once we get out of the woods, completely out of the pandemic, then you begin to actually measure the achievement of the government as against the competence they have to do what they want to do. But for now, there is an impediment that is just global. It's not an excuse that one will want to just yes.
We'll continue to beg, however.
No, well, you know, please, let's just clarify something with beggary. Beggary is not unique
to Sierra Leone.
That's why I address these things at the continental level. You know, we need to do a lot of rethinking continentally. The extent to which we should accept the prescriptions from the World Bank, that, you know, the extent to which we can negotiate with IMF at times to our own disadvantage. So we need a rethink continentally, not even regionally.
All right, now let's go to education, one of the top priorities in the 2022 budget. Of course, one of the top priorities equally in the Julius Maada Bio SLPP-led New Direction Administration, education, human capital development, so to speak. But now, in what many people have said and have published results and reports, that the reading culture has died out, not even dying, has died out. In fact, a study by a civil society organization known as Society for Knowledge Management, that report is expected to be out by the end of November. The study shows an appalling state of the availability and use of libraries in schools, which is the foundation or fundamental stages of the reading culture. Well, now the floating book fair, Logos Hope, returns to Sierra Leone for its 7th tour since 1977. The last time Logos Hope was in Sierra Leone, presumably it was around 2010. Now it is back to sell books at a reasonable or cheaper cost, depending on what area you want: science, commerce, arts. Well, the floating bookshop is in the country for 1 month. It has already spent, as at this time of the program, about 4 or 5 days now. Do we see, Professor, I'll start with you on this. Do we see possibility? Have you ever visited Logos Hope ship in the first place, sir?
Not here. No. You know, I'm transient. You know, I'm in and out. But I want to address this issue of reading culture. My first question is, what are we reading? You know, what are we reading? And I like to use specific examples, okay, rather than just broad statements. I recollect many years ago, Uganda had suffered tremendously, you know, civil wars and things like that. For some strange reasons, a lot of libraries were attacked and destroyed. And I was given a project to see how we can rebuild, particularly the library in the medical school. And one proviso that I insisted on was that, yes, we can try to develop this library, but we have to encourage African writers, African university lecturers to write about their respective disciplines. You know, so outside of science, there is very little that one can claim that points of view do not matter. Points of view matter. And for me, yes, we have to nurture the whole thing about reading. We have so many obstacles in terms of its growth. We have to be realistic about it. But what I would love to see is African academics in particular, for tertiary level education, African academics to write their own books, textbooks and reference books. I push that a lot wherever I go to encourage us to read. Let me give you the last example in terms of libraries. I participated in a major accreditation exercise last year for a department in Nigeria. And among the criteria to become accredited was the status of the library. And the people who were carrying out the accreditation noted among their observations, yes, the library was there, but there were not too many books on the shelves. This is a fairly well-established university. There are not too many books on the shelves. And one of the reasons for that, budget. budget, okay? Because to bring these books in is rather expensive. And you know what the dollar is doing to us across the globe. But the university responded in this way. And this is where I know where we stand in this country. Because I'm familiar with what is going on tremendously in our discipline in other parts of the continent. The university stated clearly that yes, the library may not have the physical books because of the various reasons, among which are finance. However, what the library has done is to create access to global databases. So you don't have to physically go to the library nowadays. From your home.
E-libraries.
Yes, you can access libraries in the globe. So there's with this development of technology, there's a new way to talk about libraries. And I'm dying to find out in this country the extent to which we focus on that. Because we may not be able to import books when we are not having enough books written by ourselves. But my goodness, we should create that access to, that possibility to access global libraries through e-platforms. That's all hardcover and all of those kinds of things. It might impact negatively on the industry. We need to ascertain that when we talk about libraries, we're not just talking about physical structures with books in them.
It is the books that make the infrastructure effective.
Yeah, but the physical books are available now online.
Electronic library.
Yes, they are available online. So let us focus on trying to develop that capacity to maximize access to online databases.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me, Kelvin, your take on this.
Yeah, like we are saying, the library industry is evolving. It's evolving in a way that, like Professor said, physical books, yes, maybe for elementary levels and maybe GSS levels, but for
some traditionalists.
Yes, for some traditionalists. But I'm telling you, it is easier electronically because it gives you almost automatic access to where you want to be in terms of a research or you want to read on a particular topic. Because if you just have the address, it's just opening the space. Thank God now we have the cyber law and the cyber crime law now into existence. I think it also helps in that direction because there should be controls in the way we do our research in terms of going to this digital library that Professor was talking about. But really, it's now time for us to migrate to that level because that's the way it's going to be. It's not going to be the old school anymore. Mm-hmm. But what I am insisting is that we should inculcate the culture of reading from our kindergartens to the elementary level and also to GSS level. When that reading culture is being nurtured at that level, you can go in leaps and bounds now to read whatever online as the case may be.
But the studies shows that the availability and use of libraries in schools are nothing to write home about.
Yeah, but that study, we cannot authenticate that study now because one, we don't know the date and the schools they went to and the evolving circumstances that is around reading now.
In surveys you have to do samples.
Yes, but I went to a school where the library was less than 50%, I could say, but at least I can read it. I can read now, and many other kids can definitely read.
I've been to schools, for example, like St. Edward's, the Bow School, the K School, those top-notch schools, secondary schools. Have you been to them and see if the libraries have books stock in them?
Well, I am not a believer of top-notch schools actually.
Well, so these are
these
are some of the schools according to Society for Knowledge Management that they conducted a study on.
Yeah, but the top-notch school, the name itself, top-notch school, those names that you called could not be, when it comes to the quantitative assessment, could not be referred to as top-notch schools. We're not top-notch schools when we say, you get my point. Now I'm coming from a very top-notch school, but
what is that? And what is that?
No, I won't tell you. Okay. So I find out. Go to my Facebook page. But it's serious. It's the mentality. It's the idea. That's why I believe primary education more than anything else. There are some people they just have primary education, but they are basically educated. If you get it properly, you can. That's where you build your new skills. You read, you write, you calculate, and you do your everyday mathematics, and you are done. All the things now you read on the way. There's a big library opening ahead of us. That's the social media. Every day you see people posting articles, people reading articles, misleading and not misleading as the case may be. So the power to discern that which is right or that which is misleading or that which is not, that which is misinformation is the big problem. So it's high time we started opening the space in this industry to digital libraries so that everybody is, propelled. The professor here is a teacher. He knows that when you base your assessment of a student on a particular assignment, say, look, read this book, I'm telling you, they find it any way necessary because they know if they do not eat it, they won't respond to anything you talk about. So this is how you catch them. So in university, you don't need the physical library nowadays. You need the digital one because people study, how do you call it, online, off campus, and as the case may be. So if there is a digital part,
we have the facilities in our universities.
Yes, of course, yes.
No. You know, I am not going to support the notion that we do not need physical books in libraries. Okay, they are always necessary. I'm talking now strictly from my professional perspective. They're always necessary. The thing is, you have problems procuring them, which could be finance, etc., but they're always necessary and supplemented by access to digital sources. Again, I like specific examples. 2 years ago, one of my books, the last book I wrote, was a reference book for a class I was teaching and others. The books cannot be bought by students because it was published the book was published in the United States and $95 at that time for one copy. Okay, so I was really wondering how would we be able to get this book in the continent. I even wrote to the publishers, is there any way we could try to get reduction in cost to allow our students access to the book. You know what happened? My teaching assistant came to the class and he came with a copy of my book downloaded. It's been digitalized. All right, now we lose money, you know, as authors we lose money because of that, but the mere fact that this guy was able to access a digital copy of my book made it possible for others to use it. So this is why I'm emphasizing that we need to focus on infrastructure that will maximize access to databases globally. It's possible, it's being done, okay, and I know it's being done. I've been responsible for that in another country, the continent. So this is my appeal to the government. Let us invest a lot in that particular aspect of it.
Investing in that will require firstly a law or a policy around the very discourse, each of discourse. But as we speak, we are made to understand that even the Libraries Act or Libraries Bill, draft bill, is stuck somewhere in one of the ministries. So that is where I will come in. Peter, is the government serious, in fact, when we talk about building human capital, if we cannot get the culture fixed?
Of course, your question will always trigger some responses, probably that how would you want to know the government is serious by just placing education at the topmost priority?
You want to be spending and not monitoring what you're spending?
So, you know, when once you are confronted with a problem, I think the best way to solve that problem first is to identify the cause of the problem. And in my opinion, prior to the advent of the new era now, the social media, the culture of reading was not abysmal as it is now. You will definitely agree with me that even in our churches now, in schools, students are glued to their mobile phones. They are in their mobile phones either enjoying their TikToks, videos that are not even associated with their education. So we have to look around that as the cause of the problem.
So do you want to now shift the responsibility of blame from the government to the parents or to the homes?
They have to be that share. You know, growing up as a kid, our time was always shared, or a portion sort of. You have time for playing, time for reading, time to go to bed. Don't agree with me. But now, parents, I'm sure, are not monitoring or not even sort of too tight around those measures. You understand? And you see, we must appreciate the minister that we have now in Senge. You understand? To even have the initiative to believe that if we want to fix the academic problem in Sierra Leone, there has to be this preschooling foundation that has to be solid. You understand? So when you begin to build the kids there, it is like catching them when they are young.
In public schools.
You understand?
It exists in public schools.
Yes. So it's like catching them when they are young. You begin to strengthen their foundation. So growing up, there is one popular lady now that is always in putting forth competition around spelling. Is it spelling bee?
Yes.
Fine. You know, I think they have run for over 5 years. Is it? These are means through which you can motivate kids to begin to go into research. Like Doc was saying, we are definitely transiting to the digital world. Like the library now, there's one University of London. When you are a student there, a registered student, with associated with their portal, sort of, just that you're being a student there can expose you to more than 100 libraries. That's the type of networking they're sort of into. But we still need the physical libraries. We still need to encourage students to go into the libraries and read.
All right.
Yeah, and the libraries do have, if you can build in capacity in libraries, that will provide access. The example I gave, the responses that were made to these accreditors, the library may not have a lot of physical books, but in the library, when you go there, you can access global libraries. Yes.
Quickly, before I forget, Doc stated something very much relevant, like he was referencing his book that he authored. You understand? That is another significant problem in Sierra Leone. Definitely, Patrick, I'll challenge you. How many authors will you name in Sierra Leone? We used to know this point. Seal Cherry Coca. Is it Cherry Coca?
Chini Coca.
Chini Coca. You understand?
Late file.
Yes.
Late
But now you struggle to identify authors.
We have to Jali.
Yes. He has books from I'm sure he's referring to newcomers.
Yes.
Not those old traditional.
We don't have to, depend on foreign writers. Let us encourage this area to
Thank
open
you
up.
very much, Peter, Kelvin, and Professor. Now, quickly, you see me in my supporters jersey, in Sierra Leone football supporters jersey. That is to tell you, we do not time it on our side as we approach the 2022 African Cup of Nations tournament in Cameroon next year. Well, already there is a brawl between some players at the national team and the Sierra Leone Football Association over the appointment of a Ghanaian footballer, Messi Johansen, into the national squad. And he's been named as arguably the best midfielder ever Sierra Leone has welcomed into the national team. That's according to the press release in the Sierra Leone Football Association. Clearly, what has brought about the confusion or the conflict between the players who are claiming that in fact that's the wrong use of a foreign-based player or the wrong placement of his title. And a discouragement to other players to do their best, their utmost. So, are we not already fanning the flame of our defeats or poor performance in the African Cup of Nations? Already some other assistants to the technical team, the likes of Junior Tumbu and some senior Leone Stars players have been added to the technical team to bolster the technicality of the squad. Let me bring in Kelvin Lamdo on this. I'm sure you must have followed a bit of confusion.
Yeah, let me just say something. You see, in this day and age, the world is modernizing. We don't stick to archaic principles nowadays. Even FIFA is flexible about players changing their nationalities for the sake of having the opportunity to ply their trade. For example, this boy, I've seen him perform. Is really good, but the technical team knows better than we the supporters. If they see a material name that they need in the Leone Star national team, it is not a strange thing. When we go back to history,
should the Secretary General of the Football Association say there's no better midfielder in Sierra Leone compared to that?
No. I don't want to talk about the utterances because I cannot.
That is what has caused us.
Okay, let's not leave it as there. Let's get the argument straight here. We had Atomensa. Atomensa was a Ghanaian national. He played for my club, Eastern Lions, and he was one of the best or prolific number 10s this country has ever seen. And he became a member of the LEONE national team, and he did very well. So under those circumstances, if this is another opportunity for us to have, the man is a performer. He is a performer. He's a good performer. So if you have a good performer,
this seeming better than any midfielder.
Don't trust my judgment on that because I'm an Eastern Lions fan.
Listen, I'm just really happy that we're discussing African football and not Manchester United and
thank you,
man, and all of that.
I mean, because you qualify, a fan of the Super Eagles. Because you fly between the US, Nigeria, and
I am the fan of African football.
Thank you.
I don't have any European club.
But do you see the youngsters now to be performing better in the forthcoming?
Well, I'm hoping that they would improve upon their performance.
Of course,
yes. This is my prayer that.
Regardless of all
of these quibbles, we just need at the end of the day to perform very, very well.
The good thing is there is age on the side of the players. There is age on the side of players, except one player that is over that.
Young fresh bloods. Peters.
Yeah, the good thing here is that the support coming from the government is huge, and it is up to them to give their best. You understand? Because to have the team being exposed to a lot of pre-engagements, friendly matches will involve huge money.
So BO is now synonymous to African Cup of Nations. Anyways, a quick seconds bites. Lawlessness and indiscipline seem to be taking the order of the day. Despite several operation pushbacks, operation weed, operation this, there seem to be more traders occupying the footpath, the right of way, and blocking the roadside where vehicles are supposed to be plying, causing huge traffic congestions, especially during rush hours.
Let's go back to basics. Please provide market for these people, and they begin to enforce.
Will they go there?
If there is a market, they'll go.
So do you think it will solve the eyesore that Freetown is right now? Freetown is like a constellation of ghettos. And that contributes to the lawlessness. As I was indicating earlier on, you see, you're driving, and somebody just darts in front of you, tells you to stop, he wants to cross. It's not just now these bikers and keke people. No, it's not. The pedestrians are also behaving lawlessly when it comes to using the roads. So it's a multi-problem.
Before we close?
Yeah, the government will always want to come hard in terms of discipline.
But it's tied.
Well, not tied necessarily, but you get varying voices always.
And they will say,
it's not remember, like recently, the police force had wanted to enforce the law when Samuel was invited. And we have a lot of people, we have them saying it is their right to be out there to give support. That's not correct.
Alright, thank you very much, Peter Singh, Kelvin Lando, and Professor Cecil Blake. And this is how we end this week's edition of Inside Media. This program was produced by Lucian Genda. Thanks to my technical operators, Senesima Kavore, Emilia Sawyer, and Tusan Onyere. Thank you to my camera operator, Emric Smith, who has been with us. And my name is Patrick Sale. Again, thanks to Kelvin, Peter, and Professor Cecil Blake. We shall be back next week for a fresh edition. Goodbye for now. Have a splendid weekend.
Trying their best to stop our progress with bad propaganda.